Make great birthday gifts, Christmas gifts. They can be used to store watches or even jewelry. You can add several decorative elements to your liking. These boxes can be made for $5 or less, and they are easy to make. I'll list all the things you need to make these boxes in the video description below. Now, it's time to get started. So I'm going to show you how to put a stop block in first. That will allow all of your pieces to be the exact same length. You don't have to use a miter saw like this. Any miter saw will work. Well, so just watch what I'm going to do here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the blade to a spot on my, what we call the deck. And I'm going to make a mark. For this box, I'm going to make that mark at 12 inches from the blade on this side. And so I'll make a mark right there. And when you look at your tape measure, you'll notice it has a little bit of slop. That allows for it to compensate for 1/16 of an inch. So that way when you push this in, this right here will compensate for that. Or when you pull it, it will compensate for it. So your box will be exactly 12 inches if you make that mark there. Next thing you're going to want to do is get a block of wood. That block of wood will sit right here. And you won't be able to see my mark because of where the camera is. But we're going to set this. And if you're interested, I got this on Amazon. It's like a box of 20 or something, I don't know. And they seem to be pretty good. Line it up with that mark off the back. Then slide your stop block in up against it without moving it. Press it down. Then lock this against it. And the reason you're doing this is you want to make sure that this block is not twisted. So you'll tighten that up. And then you'll look on this side, and you're going to see your mark right there. So now your mark from this blade here to here is exactly 12 inches. So we're going to start with this fence picket right here. I got this out of the trash. Notice it has some holes in there, and we're going to use that today with I basically just planed this down, but you don't have to. You can sand it. And so I'm going to cut all the good places out of this wood. And what I did was I marked it. I know I have a 12-inch piece here to say here. And from here to here. I'm cutting out all the knots and bad spots. And that'll be a good base for my box. Now I have 4 pieces, and this one has a little bit of a bug hole in it. I'm going to cut a spare extra one. Now we're good to go on the 4 sides. We're also going to cut another piece that'll go on the ends, but we're going to cut that here in a minute. Now we're going to set up our stop block one more time, but we're actually going to use this wood as our measurement, because these are kind of rough estimates or dimensions. And we're going to put this stop block right here up against the blade, using that for our dimension. We don't even have to measure. And now we're ready to cut 2 ends. This being one of them. Now that will be a perfect square. Does it look like one? I don't think so. Just based off the grain, but it actually is a square. Now we have 2 sides, a top and a bottom, and 2 ends. Okay, I'm going to put a bevel on this board right here on each side. That's going to allow me to not have any exposed edge wood. I'm going to use this digital protractor in order to get the blade on the saw exactly 45 degrees. These blocks. We're just going to put the exact same bevel on each side of this all the way around. So I'm going to use this wood filler, Elmer's glue. It's stainable. And I'm just going to fill some of these holes right here that were left over by nails, and you won't need to use this step whenever you do yours because you might buy a brand new picket. But I'll just fill these up. But what I wanted to mention while I was doing this is that I have a board here that's kind of rough, and I have a board that's very smooth, and another board that's very smooth. And so at this point I'm in the planning stages, and I have this board flipped over. This board on the other side looks just like this. But my point is, I'm going to make this the bottom of the box because it's the ugliest, even though I could sand most of this out. It also has a little divot right there. And I'm going to make this the top of my box, and this the side, and the other side of this will be smooth as well. But my point is, I'm using the ugliest piece for the bottom. And so you have this opportunity to plan out which one is going to be in which order when you fold your box up. Okay, I put a straight edge down right here. I put all these boards up against that. And you'll notice there may be a little imperfections here and here and here, but don't worry about that. We'll fix that later, and I'll show you how to do that. Now that everything is lined up against this, we'll take our masking tape and we will just put a few pieces of masking tape. This is going to be our clamp. So I removed the rubber bands, and now I'm just going to take off the tape. Okay, this box has now been sanded. What I want to point out is, again, we're just going to fill these little imperfections with the putty. But when you do your sanding, you don't round the edges first. You just sand everything smooth and get all your glue and all that off of it before you actually start to round the edges off. If you want your box to be a little more edgy, sharper, it'll come out like this. If you want the box to have a little more rounded edge, of course you can round those edges quite a bit more. In this case, we are going to round the edges slightly, but I just wanted to show you the difference between doing it rounded, like heavily rounded, versus, you know, you can make these edges as sharp as you want. That thing is so sharp. Now, also, if you have a work table like this, like I have, that's been used for a lot of different things, and it basically will scratch your work up while you're sanding. you can get these cooking sheets. They're silicone, and you can put that down while you're sanding. And every time you flip your box over, you won't get scratches and scuffs transferred from your table onto your work surface or onto your workpiece. And that's a huge help because it'll, every time you sand and you flip it over, you'll look and then there's some more dents and scratches. So that's just the tip I wanted to give you there. And I'll leave links in the bottom in the description for these right here. You can get them on Amazon. They're very cheap. Get the generic ones. They're cheap. It's all the same material. Right now is your last chance to pick the side that will be your top, because right now you're going to make that choice. And for me, I'm going to choose this one. I have a little spot right here that I noticed after everything's sanded up that I wanted to make the bottom. So these edges are my favorite, so I chose this once again for the top. So what I've done is I've set my saw up. I've got my blade, of course, at 90 degrees. And I've set my saw, I don't want the teeth too far into the box because I don't want it tearing out much. At the same time, I don't want, once I come around to the next side, I don't want to be cutting high into the next side. So that gives me the least amount of tear out for each pass, and you'll see what I'm talking about when I cut. For this box, I'm going to use this dark walnut, and this is made by Rust-Oleum, and I like the way it turns out whenever you put it on nice and thick.